Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub. Welcome to part 2 of my meeting with Avi Goldwasser, a Jew passionately committed to the survival and well-being of the State of Israel, and one who's in the forefront of the fight against BDS on campus, the movement that seeks to impose boycotts, divestments, and sanctions against Israel, and which really is trying to delegitimize the Jewish state in an attempt to eradicate it from the map. If you were with us for the first part of my discussion with Avi Goldwasser, you know that he has devoted much of his time and energy into producing documentary films that chronicle the bigotry and hatred being spewed against Israel on college campuses throughout America. And as we sat with Avi, his most recent film is entitled Hate Spaces, The Politics of Intolerance on Campus. And I'm pleased to say it's a film you can see right here on JBS. And as we pick up the conversation, I asked Avi Goldwasser whether he considers the BDS movement against Israel to be no more than veiled anti-Semitism. On L'Chaim, here is my meeting with Avi Goldwasser.
That's a great question. And I tell you, I literally spent a lot of time trying to separate it. I started by saying, look, people have different views of the world, different views of a problem, and there are honest differences. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. I went to demonstrations against the war in Gaza, 2 years ago, whatever, 3 years ago. And I wanted to see who feels that strongly to march on the street. I wanted to engage. I wanted to understand what's in there. So the biggest group was, I'd say, Arabs and Muslims. And I fully understand that. I have no problem. It's a kind of ethnic solidarity, tribalism. I understand that. That's okay. Then there's a group of Jews. And I got to tell you, I engaged with them. I couldn't understand them. There was something disturbing about their personality and the way they talked. It wasn't rational. I mean, the Arabs and Muslims, it's rational. I get it. And then the third biggest group was, again, inexplicable. They were gays, mostly young women. I don't get it. But they're there. This is their issue. Not that gays are being thrown from buildings, not that Iran hangs so many gays, not that they're killed in Gaza. No. This is their issue. And then there were what I call the old anti-Semites, you know?
The first group of Jews were not anti-Semites.
No, the Jews...
These are honest Jews who have a positive sense of their own Jewish identity, but somehow see Israel as the bad guy.
Okay, so when you think about Jews against Judaism or Jews against Israel, okay, you're dealing with, in my opinion, a kind of personality disorder. Okay, I'm not a psychiatrist, but that's my conclusion. As you know, I did the film on J Street. I tried to understand their point of view. And it's complex. I think you have a lot of young people, young Jewish students, who I think are naive. I think they're well-intentioned. Mm-hmm. And I think they're not connected to reality. They're idealists. Okay? And then you've got the leaders of the group, which I think are either dishonest or delusional, or both. Okay? But look, there are many leftists in Israel who know all the facts. It's not a question of facts, and they just interpret them differently because I think they look at it from a Marxist lens and a moralistic lens, which may not be tied to reality. But to them, being morally pure is more important than the consequences of being morally pure. So I think there's a kind of, maybe it's not fair to call it personality disorder, but it's a kind of disconnect from reality. That's what I mean by disorder. If you're not connected to reality, what do you think is going to happen if there's a Palestinian state tomorrow? You think conflict is over, we're done, peace will break out? If you believe that, You're either naive, ignorant, or delusional. I don't know. Because I don't think any rational person has any evidence. Talk about science-based. What's the evidence? One example, show me, where there's peace in the Middle East between different groups. It's a tough area.
Mm-hmm. The people who see it differently than you and I do, and I think you articulate it so beautifully. I hope everybody's listening very carefully. And I try to teach exactly what you're talking about. I am running into people, and I see it on television as well. It is an illness at the moment that has gripped our society as a whole. People talk past each other. People don't sit down and say, I want to have a discussion, and I want to tell you what I think, and I want to hear what you think, and I want to see where do you feel I'm wrong and why do you feel I'm wrong, because maybe I'll learn something, but I want you to do the same thing. Let me tell you why I think you're wrong, and maybe you'll learn something. That's not the way people talk anymore. There are people who would listen to everything you're saying and say, bottom line, I'm only concerned about one bottom line, Avi. Israel is an occupying power on the West Bank. And I don't care if life is better for Palestinians on the West Bank than it is in any other Palestinian country, Arab country. That's not the issue. The issue is Israel is a colonialist, occupying state, as we're sitting here right now. Haaretz just ran a story under the title, Occupation Nation. Occupation Nation, as if that's what Israel is intrinsically. Nobody ever says to me, I understand there's no alternative. Israel's on the West Bank because they're given no alternative. You and I know the vast majority of Israelis, they don't want their children to be there. They'd be happy to disengage. They're happy to help the Palestinians build a state on the West Bank as long as the Palestinian state next to the Israeli state is Canada, like Canada is with the United States. But until there is a Canada that will live like it does with the United States, the Israeli people and Jews like you and I have no interest in Israel saying, we will just withdraw and there will be peace. But you're talking to people who have no interest. Interest is the wrong word. They're in a different world, Avi. They're in a different world. And therefore, I don't know how, I am very, very pessimistic right now. That the people I saw at Columbia when I was there when Denny Denone's address in Columbia, right. The people there who have no interest in dialoguing with him, they have only one interest, to tell Israel it's Israel's fault. Jews in yarmulkes, it's Israel's fault. That's all they can say. That's all they want to hear.
Okay, so I think when it comes to Jews against Israel, just for 1 second, as opposed to others, in my experience, and I spoke to Jewish educators and others, it boils down to one thing. They believe their worldview as Jews and as decent people, that meaning in life comes from striving for moral purity. Israel taints them. As a Jew, okay, there's sort of a collective guilt.
Jews feel affected.
They feel directly. The Jews in Israel make me as a Jew feel diminished morally. Because whenever I talk, I have to say I'm not like them. When I talk to anybody, okay, to Goyim, I talk to anybody, I have to distance myself or I'm tainting myself morally, and my mission in life is moral purity. Okay, look what's going on in our society. We try to be nicer and nicer and more morally pure, okay? And in fact, I had a discussion with a teacher. This is a teacher in a Jewish high school. He said to me, you know, under no circumstances should Israel bomb Gaza if one innocent Palestinian child dies. He lives in New York.
Who's saying this?
A Jewish
educator.
High school teacher. Yeah.
Yes, and it could be a rabbi. There are rabbis.
Of course, the rabbis say the same thing. And I asked, they live in Newton. I said, Okay, but what happens if you live in Sderot and the rockets are coming down and they just killed your child? How would you feel? Should Israel retaliate? He said, no, doesn't matter. I don't want it on my conscience. The one innocent child was killed because of my government or a Jewish government. I said, that's nice of you, you know? And I said, quite frankly, 6 million morally pure dead Jews is enough for me. And if I have to be morally tainted in your eyes, but alive, I'll take life. You can decide for yourself, but don't decide for me. I want to live. Moral purity is not the object of Jewish civilization. It's survival. Now, you can argue whether survival is at stake here or not. It's a fair. But don't tell me moral purity trumps life. That's not the Jewish values that I have.
Not at all.
Right. So why do they think this way? Because they're narcissists. Because every conversation winds up about them feeling good, them feeling morally superior to me. Okay? It's a kind of narcissism that pervades our society. And this is Jewish narcissism, moral narcissism. Look at me. I'm morally pure. I'm for Gaza. I'm for Hamas. You just care about the Jews. These are people who are disconnected from the reality. And it's easy to talk this way when you live in the bubble in America, which is a great place. Go over there. Go walk through Gaza with a yarmulke. Let's see how long you last. Walk through Paris with a yarmulke. See how long you last. These people are disconnected. They have this vision, idealist vision. And they're well-intentioned, and they're wonderful people. Okay? But they're idealists, and some are delusional. That's not the way the world works. That's not the human condition, and they can't accept it. Because they want a utopia, they want perfection. And it's about them. That's why the fact that they're damaging Israel and Jews in Israel doesn't mean to them. I'm morally pure. I'm morally superior to the Jews who settled there. This is absurd. We welcome immigrants here, undocumented immigrants. Jews coming to West Bank are undocumented immigrants in one view. No, that's not allowed. What are you talking about? Jews can't live in Ramallah? Why? These are morally confused individuals. And it's disheartening because they're wonderful friends. They're decent people, wonderful neighbors. As I said, I think there's a kind of personality disorder here, the inability to assess reality for what it is.
Or it's what you also said, that they somehow feel, very important word you use, personally diminished by what Israel does.
Absolutely. The way they phrase the word settlers, it's like, look, the world isn't perfect. The Israeli government can do stupid things, okay? But there are tough choices, and they don't understand the tough choices. It's bad or worse. And in fact, we don't decide whether there's peace or not. How can we? There's only so few of us there. They can't accept it because they're also programmed for solutions. I was showing my J Street challenge in Palo Alto, and there were 14 kids from Stanford, right? And this 19-year-old kid stands up. He has the solution to the Middle East conflict and the occupation, peace, blood. All the geniuses for the past 100 years have failed. This 19-year-old kid at Stanford, he's got the solution, and he's certain that if we do that and the occupation, peace will happen. But he doesn't care what happens afterwards. As long as you end the occupation, he's no longer tainted. See, it's all about him. It's all about him feeling better as a Jew because Jews are diminished by Israel's behavior, and they have to distance themselves. Mm-hmm. It's narcissism.
Mm-hmm. So, Avi, on the optimism, pessimism scale, in terms of in the immediate, over the next 5 to 10 years, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the way Israel will be perceived and dealt with, first on the college campus, and then in American society as a whole?
So if there's one thing I learned from my parents, the survivors, is that we have no choice but to be optimistic. It's not a choice. You have to be optimistic.
Yes. By the way, you spent a long time talking about people who were disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
Don't do that now. I'm not asking you, I'm asking you tachlis here. Are you optimistic? Are things going to change? Are they going to change for the better? Don't tell me I believe in optimism. That's not the
No,
question.
let's differentiate the past, the present, and the future. The future is not determined. We can determine it, right? There are probabilities associated.
I just want to know what you think is going to happen.
Well, I tell you, I think obviously it depends on what we do, and I'm optimistic that we'll eventually wake up. That is, Jewish leadership will wake up. The Jewish resources will be mobilized on the right problem. Okay? I believe that. And I'm saying I have to believe that because I think that is more constructive and more helpful, and that's necessary prerequisite to being effective in whatever we do
And what
to
do you
achieve
want?
that goal.
Very good. What do you want Jewish leadership to do?
Wake up.
What does that mean?
That means that they have to examine. Let's go back simply. Look at what we've done to deal with anti-Semitism for the last 30 years, and look at what we got. And if you're a rational human being, you say it's not working. I mean, it's so obviously not working, right? Here's anti-Semitism in the U.S., the globe. Whatever we did hasn't worked. So the first thing is to admit we failed. It's hard for leaders to say, I failed. I should resign. I can't do it. Get somebody else. Maybe they can. Unless there's the kind of recognition that Jewish leadership has failed, you can say they did their best. It doesn't matter what they did their best or not. They failed. And either we get new leaders or a new approach. But to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result is insanity. Now, what we've tried to do, I think certainly Charles much more than I, is speak truth to Jewish leaders who are failing us.
What's the truth?
The truth is that the Jewish community has engaged in everyone else's cause and have ignored Jewish community concerns because it's part of the moral narcissism. And I heard all the rationalization, we're building capital. I mean, there's never reciprocity. Reciprocity doesn't work. What works is common interest. If it's in the common interest of the groups we support to support us, they will. If it's not, they won't. Everything we've done to help blacks in America, I don't see a lot of reciprocity. There's some wonderful African American supporters by far. But as a community as a whole, it's been disappointing. And for someone to put all their money on reciprocity is foolish. I don't think France appreciates how many American boys died for France. I don't think there's reciprocity. I don't think there's appreciation. People act in the best interest at each time. They're not sentimental about the past. And Jews have to start caring about Jewish community first and foremost before we reach out to all the other people. And the arrogance of someone like ADL to tell me when I came to see them about my daughter in college that we have to care about everybody. We're tiny people with limited resources. We're going to save everybody. We hardly can save ourselves. We failed to save the Jews in Europe, and now we're spreading ourselves thin, helping everybody under the assumption that they'll support us without any evidence that they will support us at a huge cost. I asked the rabbi when I show hate spaces, how many sermons have you given about the plight of Jewish students on campus versus Syrian refugees, transgender bathroom, which are important issues, but just compared to zero. So unless there's a change in the attitude of Jewish leaders, I'm pessimistic, okay? But I think that it has to get worse before it gets better. Mm-hmm. I think there's a greater awareness, and certainly Hate Spaces, one of its goals is to raise awareness among Jewish leaders, first and foremost. We've got a problem. We cannot do everything for everybody. We have to start with the next generation of Jews. If you don't support Jewish students on campus, why should they belong to a community that doesn't support them?
And what does it mean? See, the only problem I'm having here is everything you say resonates with me. And then I want to know, how do we take the vision and implement it in real life? When you say Jewish leadership has failed this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we have a new leader at ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, who has a very different perspective than Abe Foxman did and those who were with Abe. And so the criticism that you had a moment ago about ADL is valid, although I'm told that the ADL leadership is shifting back towards more Jewish concerns. We'll see. But are you talking about AJC? Are you talking about Jewish federations? Are you talking about the President's Conference? And what can they do that they're not doing now that would make you feel that they were going in the right direction and would give you a sense of optimism?
That's a great question. I'll be glad to. We met with many of these people that you mentioned, and they're all highly intelligent, decent, well-intentioned people. I just think they have the wrong strategy and not a complete understanding of the real problem. And like anybody, they have a certain fixed view of the world, and within that worldview, they do what makes sense to them. The world is changing, and I don't think they've adopted. I hope the new age.
How? What are they failing to do?
Okay, so look, my background has been science and business, and it's very simple. To solve a problem, you need to define it correctly. In business, we spend over half the time just talking about what the problem is, not jumping to solutions. And too many times we have this initiative, ADL, a wonderful initiative, tolerance. It's a disaster. Now we tolerate intolerance. Life isn't that simple to come up with a simple meme or a simple slogan. But you have to come back to the problem. What is the problem that causes anti-Semitism in America today?
What's the problem?
The leftist ideology.
I'm sorry?
Leftist ideology. Marxist ideology that seeped into the liberal
so
party.
you want Jewish organizations to address in some way leftist ideology in America?
I think that it's very hard for Jewish leaders who are liberal and leftist
Yes.
to tackle the reality
Yes.
that the left has abandoned Jews.
Yes.
It's part. I know I have friends like that. I tell you what's happening. They know there's something wrong, right? They're not stupid. They're very smart people. They know that the left, who they bet on to protect Jews, that's been the bet for the last 100 years, has shifted, changed, whatever it is, okay? But what are you going to do? They can never go to the right. They never go to the right. So I know they don't sleep well at night, my liberal friends. They've been abandoned. There's no place to go. I know friends who want to look for an alternative to the Democratic Party. They cannot go Republicans, never. But there's no alternative, okay? So just acknowledging the problem publicly to the community. We have a problem. The Democratic Party has abandoned the Jewish community. That's a fact. It's obvious to everyone. And therefore, too often, Jewish organizations have become subsidiaries to the Democratic Party's political agenda. Stop.
Were you ever a Democrat?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Are you now?
No, I'm a libertarian, I would say. I vote against someone. And there's no candidates I vote for. I'm excited.
Isn't that such
It is sad.
It's such a tragedy.
It is a tragedy.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question, you have to define the problem properly. The problem is an ideology that is anti-Jewish, anti-Judeo-Christian civilization, anti-Israel, okay? And that's why Jewish education has to be restructured to deal with the ideological assault on Jews and Israel.
And that's what you do very effectively.
And what's happening in schools, educators, I speak to these people.
Yes.
They don't realize that the ground underneath has shifted. They still think it's a matter of giving them the facts. The facts aren't going to change.
Yes.
It's the value system. And you have to start by understanding the other value system that is being used to undermine you.
Yes.
Tunnels are being built. So the kids, the students coming out of Jewish education are morally confused. They're totally morally confused. And of course, they're susceptible to J Street and just flipping to becoming active in Students for Justice for Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace. So Jewish education has to be addressed in terms of the ideological war and the new reality. We have to train people, inoculate them against this poisonous ideology. Number one, Jewish education. Number two, public statements. You have to make the Jewish community your priority.
Okay, by the way, if you were a major national Jewish leader, you can pick any organization you want. World Zionist Organization, President's Conference, American Jewish Committee, ADL, anyone you want, and now you're the head of it. What's the public statement that would come out of your mouth?
that the community is under ideological and cultural assault, both in the universities and in the media and in the political arena. And as Jewish leaders, we need to expose that and counter that. And therefore, we cannot help everyone else to the same degree we have. Okay? We're a tiny minority, and our survival is the first priority. And our survival is being threatened by a lot of these forces in multiple venues. We did a film on the campus. I did a film about high school. It's poison that's seeping in that will not end well unless we stop it. And the first thing is to recognize the problem, articulate the problem to the community so the community is aware. And leadership is about having a vision and getting people to follow you. Okay? The Jewish community has mostly been working on some reflex relating to Nazis and Aryans in Idaho. That's not the current threat.
I just want to try to be fair here. I know them all. And there are people in my mind who are in leadership positions, whether it's the President's Conference, whether it's AJC, and the people who are in the other organizations, Federation. These are very good, caring Jews.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure they haven't said some of what you just said.
So if you go to their websites, if you look at their press release, if you look at the public statements, and you measure what percent articulates the threat to the Jewish community, the real threat, which is ideological. I'm not concerned about swastikas on a wall. Cowards coming at night doesn't bother me. It's during the day what happens that matters, in the classroom that matters, whether it's universities, high schools, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't devote sufficient time to that, and they've not articulated the problem correctly. It's easy to talk about Nazis and right-wing and all that kind of stuff. That's easy. How many times is ADL taking on leftist or Islamist anti-Semitism? It's politically hard for them because they're donors, money, and they're friends, okay? But leadership is a burden, not a perk. They have to do the right things. Look, I concluded that more Jews would have survived had Jewish leadership in Europe done its job, okay? No one can tell the future. So Jabotinsky may have been a prophet in that sense, but there were enough signs that things weren't going well. And then when it got worse, they still didn't know what to do, and they were torn between a million factors. But leadership is tough. Either you can take the heat or get out of the kitchen. But you can't have it both ways. You can't be a nice guy and try to maintain good relationship and sacrifice the truth.
Okay. Chaim Saban, who is on the far left, Sheldon Adelson, who's on the far right, come together in Las Vegas and each pledge $50 million to create a war against BDS on the college campus. What's your sense of that?
So I was there, and I have to tell you, you have to give these two gentlemen a lot of credit.
Enormous credit.
And you know what? For what? Not
What?
for organizing it.
What?
They sat there through all the presentations.
They didn't send some lackey.
No,
They
were
were
sitting
there
up
themselves.
front, and they had to go to the bathroom, stopped. They did not miss a minute. They did the first step, which is listen to other people, so you understand the problem before you try to solve it. And you have to give enormous credit for listening. It's hard to get people of that stature to listen.
You're 100% right.
And we had 100 presentations, and they sat through each one of them.
Okay, and then what?
Okay, now here's the thing. So the first step of solving a problem, if you think of the scientific method, first step is observation. What's the problem? Okay? So they certainly listened, and they got a multifaceted view of the problem. Not simple, on campus, obviously. The next thing is to analyze the data and identify the root causes. Because you don't want to work on the symptoms, you need to work on the root causes. And when you identify the root causes, they may or may not be the root causes, so you have to test them. Okay? You need multiple experimentation. Here's one theory, another theory. So you really are convinced of the root cause, and once you are convinced, you have enough proof, you devote all your energies on that. And that's how you solve a problem. So I don't know what happened after those meetings, but it's not an easy problem. I think there are all sorts of barriers and constraints that people imagine or they're real. But the fact that those two people got together from their perspective is a step. Nothing happens instantly. They may be going through a process, I don't know, of trying different things. But the fact that it's a top on their agenda, it's a priority, that's great. I want to see ADL, AGC, and you name all the other organizations come to a summit and identify the same thing. They'll come up with the answer. But you have to start with identifying the problem and understanding the problem. I have confidence, they're smart enough, care enough, they'll figure it out. And there's not one answer, there's no silver bullet, it's multiple efforts. But somebody declare, this is a crisis, this is an emergency, we're going to pull the 40, 50 Jewish organizations in the country, the federations. Federations have not done much either. And focus on this one problem, the next generation of Jews in schools and in campus. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Put aside everything else. It's like a war. Forget about the problem. You focus on one thing because you have to win this war, or there won't be a Jewish community.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the state of emergency declared because this is serious. The longer you wait, by the way, I can tell you, when we started the David Project, and I talked about the campus, I get, what do you mean? There's no problem. Oh, okay, but Hillel is there. They'll take care of it. The reason we started the David Project, and by the way, Stand With Us started at the same time, there was a vacuum in the Jewish community. No one was dealing with the problem on campus effectively.
Including Hillel?
Of course. Otherwise,
is that hard for you to say?
Look, I've dealt with Hill on many campuses and been disappointed continuously. But part of the problem is a mismatch between what they believe their mission is versus what the problem is.
What is their mission from their perspective?
Their mission has always been to provide sort of a Jewish home for students and to enable Jewish boy to meet Jewish girl. That's the real benefit, right? And that's wonderful. Now, there's a conflict on campus. These people didn't join Hillel to fight. They want to make nice Shabbat with Muslims. So they're not the right people for today's conflict. So they have two approaches. One to say, well, we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to stick to our traditional mission. But there's no other organization on campus. And by the way, if you bring another organization, they feel territorial, and we have to fight them. Okay, I can tell you what happened at MIT. They wouldn't do any pro-Israel stuff, and they wouldn't let any other organization because they
MIT Hillel.
MIT Hillel. Just to tell you what it was, the students for Israel at MIT Students for Israel could not find a single professor at MIT to be the faculty advisor. And Hillel was marginalizing them because they didn't think it was necessary to have a second Jewish organization. I was the faculty advisor for the MIT Students for Israel. Kind of pathetic.
I hear some people criticize Hillel for being open to those who support a J Street approach or even a BDS approach.
So look, I think, in my honest opinion, with all due respect, it's a tough job. I've met several Hillel directors. I spoke to the current one as well. And it's a very tough job. They're trying to balance so many things. They don't want to lose the progressive Jews, right? They don't want to lose these Jews. They're trying to balance things. And I may disagree with the balance, but I appreciate the difficulty they have. But you know what? You have to decide who you are and what you are, and what's important and what's less important. And there are consequences, and that's just the way it is. You try to mitigate them, but you can't ignore them. Okay, so Hillel has been struggling with what to do. They're influenced by donors and others. They're influenced by feedback, and it's not a simple problem. And you know what? Maybe Hillel ought to stick to one thing, but let other organizations on campus. They are the only ones physically on campus. Stand With Us has people who are reps who come to the campus. So it's a problem that needs to be resolved. But let's put it this way. I think to some extent they failed to deal with the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hostility. And that's why you have Stand With Us and David Project and Hasbara Fellowship coming in, because there's a vacuum there. But it's disappointing that Hillel hasn't taken a more assertive view about the centrality of Israel to Judaism. Judaism is being redefined by all these fringe radical groups, just as J Street is redefining what pro-Israel means. Okay, this is kind of insidious, subversive stuff.
There was somebody on your film, Hate Spaces, who said, progressive today is to be anti-Israel. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
that is a problem for Jews who want to be progressive. And it's been in our blood. I asked you before, were you ever a Democrat? The answer was not yes, it was of course. At one time, I'll say it differently, we are progressive. I believe that the values that moved us, that we cared about in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, are no different today. The ground has shifted. It isn't us who've shifted. It offends me when somebody says to be progressive is to be anti-Israel. That's not progressive.
You're absolutely right. I am a liberal. I've always been a liberal.
Yes.
Okay? And Jews, rightly so, have been liberals.
Yes.
No question.
Yes.
The problem is that liberalism has been hijacked.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And therefore, people who call themselves liberal or progressives are not liberal. I don't know, progressive, that's a more difficult term.
I know.
But liberal has the word liberty in it. Individual rights, openness. Progressives are not liberals, okay? And it's been hijacked. And there is no liberal organizations per se. And that's part of the subversion that's been taking place in the last 30, 40 years. And it's hard for many people to recognize that. But liberalism has been hijacked. And Jews are sort of confused where to go, what to do. We are liberals. We absolutely are liberals.
Mm-hmm. So, Avi, you're really here because of Hate Spaces. How's it going? What kind of success have you had with it?
So we premiered the film in New York City November 30th. And we've had over 40...
Of 2016.
16, about 5 months ago. We've had over 40 screenings, and we have continuous demand for screening. We are working really hard to raise money so we can promote the film in schools, in communities, and so forth. And certainly having this opportunity to screen it on your channel is tremendous, and we appreciate it. I can tell you that we've screened it in Catholic high schools, in Jewish high schools, in synagogues, in churches. And the reaction is quite consistent. People are shocked. People are angry. People are frightened. They didn't know. You know a lot, obviously. We know a lot. People don't know. People are scared when they see it. I know friends who couldn't watch it. It was too upset, too anxiety-producing. I know people cried. People were mad. People are angry. Okay? And these are liberals, conservative, or progressives. I had women who marched in Washington against Trump who saw the film and said, look, this is shocking. We need to wake up the community. We're some bubble trying to help everybody in the world and not us. So we need support to promote this film, to get it out there, to get into the schools. Public schools, private, we had it in private schools. It's been a tremendous reaction. As you know, you work a long time on the film. It takes 18 to 2 years to do it, a lot of research. And you never know whether people like it or not like it. But to me, it's about having an impact. Okay? And so we've been very pleased. Last night, I can tell you, I screened it in New York City to high school parents and students, mostly private schools. We had 280 students. We had Dennis Prager in the program and others. And the reaction, again, is shock. And this is happening in high schools, too. And it's happening in second grade. Okay? This is a massive, organized, financed assault that our leaders are not addressing.
Look, I think what you're doing is just fabulous. I hope everybody watches all of your movies. You know, we're talking now about Hate Spaces, and I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to show it on JBS. Incidentally, you know, this will sound self-serving, but it's in the context of what you've been discussing. You're on JBS right now. You're being seen all over America. Charles Jacobs sat in that chair. He was seen all over America. Hate Spaces will go on JBS. It'll be seen all over America. The power of television is extraordinary. There has never been in the history of the Jewish community or the history of television a serious Jewish television channel till now. And we're PBS, it's a PBS model, nonprofit. No one's here is making money. We're all doing it for the same reason you did Hate Spaces, Forgotten Refugees, Columbia, Northeastern. It's the same reason. Everybody here is committed, passionately committed to the Jewish future. And I want to be as inclusive as I can be. Many people sit in that chair. Jeremy Ben-Ami has been in that chair. Peter Beinart has been in that chair. But there is a philosophy to what you do and a philosophy to what we do. It is educating people about what is true and trying to smash all the idols that at the moment grip so much of not only America as a whole, but even the Jewish community in America. And, you know, I don't know your familiarity with JBS, so I don't know if you could appreciate what we do. But what's important for you to hear is I appreciate what you're doing. And for you to come here and be so eloquent, I could talk to you all day and night. I hope this is only the first time that you sit in this chair and share insight. But, you know, I guess my closing question for you is, as you look at, you know, both what JBS is doing, what you're trying to do, what's the message you want to leave with the audience, Jewish and non-Jewish, who's watching you right now on multiple cable systems all over America, and online you're being watched globally? What's your message?
So I think it comes back to the question of optimism in a way. Okay, look, as an immigrant, I think I can appreciate America, as most immigrants do, more than people who are natives born here. It's just the way it is. Okay, it's hard to appreciate your parents, hard to appreciate a lot of things you're close to, grew up with. But coming from another country to America, we are the luckiest people on earth to be in America, without a doubt. And any honest immigrant would say the same. I have many friends who are immigrants. The sad thing is that many Americans don't appreciate how wonderful America is, don't appreciate how fragile civil society is, how fragile goodness is, okay? But I have faith in America, okay? And I think that Americans are decent people, are fair people, and that I think if they understood what was happening, they will do the right thing. And what we need to do is educate them about what is happening and put it in the right context, the right lens, not the false lens I call of leftism, which inverts and distorts reality for some idealistic utopia. So that's my hope. My hope is that people watch and people think and be who they are in America, decent and fair people, and are unique people on earth.
You are fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for what you do. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha, you just keep going. And I want you in that chair very, very many times. You are wonderful to speak with.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The thoughts of Avi Goldwasser, writer, director, producer of Hate Spaces, the politics of intolerance on campus. Do yourself a favor. Be sure to see Hate Spaces if it ever comes to your community in any form that Avi's described. And by the way, I'm very pleased to say we will be showing this film in its entirety, Hate Spaces, on JBS. You can see it often right here. As always, I'd love to have any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas you've heard discussed on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.